Grief isn't something we get over. It's something we live through. Something that reshapes us from the inside out. What if I told you that grief, as painful as it is, can also be a gateway to growth, clarity, and deeper love? In this episode, we're diving into the heart of grief, not just to survive it, but to learn how to transform through it. My name's Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by my teacher and mentor, Justin, and his wife, Heather.
Hello.
This is the new Ashla Podcast. So grief, one of the most powerful things we can go through in life, but we all go through it. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I believe you have an axiom for this.
I do. Grief, we say everything's a teacher. Grief is the biggest, baddest teacher on the block for most of us. It's hard. And grief is one of those things where I want to preface everything we're saying today by saying this, that there is no right or wrong way really to do any of this, and we're just sharing kind of our personal experiences, right? And our strategies that we've used. No one person grieves the same. So, and as heavy as a topic as it is, there is a lot of good news, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It's usually a pretty heavy topic with people, and we'll get into that later. But yes, there is an axiom that it really cuts right to it. It's basically about grief. And it's more geared towards grief of the loss of life, loss of loved ones, death, and the internal struggle that we seem to have with death. So, and even though we're going to get into this later about grief is really applies to lots of other situations in life, but I just wanted to kind of share this axiom before we got rolling, just to kind of set maybe the tone of how our teachings and how our path deal with grief in its totality. So the axiom is, to connect with life force energy is to allow death no dominion. When truly realized, one ends without ending. Now, on the surface, this sounds really poetic, and it sounds very spiritual, and it sounds very fluffy, maybe. I don't know. It's a truth, though, and it talks about the truth of immortality. Not of this fleshy body, which comes and goes, but of the light within. Our spirit, our energy. Life force energy, we call it the force. Some people call it chi, some people call it prana, and many other different words and different ways that people kind of teach it and deal with it. It's just not something we possess. It's something that we are. We are energy. We are life force energy. It flows through us, but it also extends beyond us. And when you connect deeply with that, it's just not just intellectually, but through experience, which varies from person to person. That's why it's hard to explain a person's experience with the force. But you realize something, that you are never, ever separated from source, whatever that source is to you. You're not merely a being moving towards death or just kind of waiting for death to happen. You are woven into this interconnected and eternal rhythm of life, death, transformation. Remember, energy can't be destroyed. It's just a fundamental law of the universe. So, death has no dominion. This is what this axiom is teaching us. It has no dominion. To be in full connection with the force is to know that the death of the body is not the end of our being. It's a transition, a doorway, like a snake shedding its skin. We're shedding a form, not of essence. When you realize that your spirit is bound to the infinite, interconnected to the entire universe itself, death will lose its grip on you because you're not going to look at it the same way. That weight kind of comes off. Your fear of death loosens. Obsession with death and obsession with waiting around to die fades. You start to live more fully right now because you know that this moment and every other moment is eternal. Again, we end in form, but we do not end in essence. We leave behind what was temporary. These bodies, in the grand scheme of the clock of the universe, if there was such a thing, is such a tiny measurement. You can't even fathom how many zeros past the decimal point. And it's temporary, but what's true, what's real, continues on. This axiom isn't teaching us just about death. It's teaching us how to live life, how to be while we're here. To connect with life force energy is to stop fearing the end. And when we do that, we begin to live without limits. We begin to love without reservation. And we serve with full presence. You're not here to fear death. You're not here to fear loss. You're here to realize that death has no dominion over the one who is awakened to the truth. So breathe deeply. Live fully. When you're truly connected to the force, you end without ending. So just wanted to share that axiom and kind of how we see it and how we teach it.
Well, I think one thing I want to throw on that too is it's not just our own death, but the death of those we care for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we grieve people who we lose, it's
Mm-hmm.
I was finishing up that book by Wayne Dyer, Excuses Be Gone, and he was talking about how in some cultures it's like when death happens, it's a celebration and then it's over. People move on with their lives and there's not that emotional attachment because of their relationship with grief. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about here.
That
When you embrace your...
reminds me of a story. I know a guy who was in the Army and he served in Alaska for many years. And in some parts of Alaska, they can't bury people until the ground thaws, right? Because it gets so cold there and everything freezes over. They literally have to keep the person preserved until the next thaw. So if you pass away like in October, man, it could be like May before you get actually buried. So what he was telling me was here's the interesting part. So say someone passes away in the fall and the ground is already too frozen over. So those people mourn that loss of that loved one during that whole season. And by the time they all meet for the funeral, they're all like happy, high-fiving, hugging, kissing. I missed you. It's like this very festive thing because they've already grieved the loss. And now by the time they're meeting to lay the person to rest, they're like, for
celebrating the life.
Celebrating the life because they've already gone through the hard stuff. And now they're just like, laying the person to rest and they're all happy and they're all like, oh man, how was the winter? And it was just like, so that puts it into a really different perspective for me because I've never been to I've never lived anywhere where it was really cold or anything. So, when someone passes away, it's like, a week later or 2 weeks later and you're at the funeral and you're still kind of going through it. But I thought that was really interesting,
Yeah.
Like through necessity, like the necessity of nature forces them to kind of mourn during that, and it's ironic, especially if you pass away in that seasonal part where everything's dying, and then hibernating, and then it's coming back around to be reborn and to regrow. And by the time you're laying this person to rest, everything around you is blooming, and the birds are singing and stuff. So it just puts it into a really, really different perspective.
Yeah, I know. For me, it's like I dealt with so much death growing up, and I've dealt with some death even in my later years, but the one thing I always keep in mind whenever I try to think of someone or I'm mourning or just giving them the space within my memories and all that for them, that it's, if I were dead, I wouldn't want people to mourn me. I wouldn't want people to grieve and cry over me. I'd want them to remember me for the good times, to celebrate those good times. Mm-hmm. And so I do try to always do celebrations of life over death days or the grieving.
Yeah.
I know I got a mile marker coming up tomorrow for the loss of my significant other. 3 years ago she passed. And on Thursday after work, I got some morning glory seeds. And every year I go and plant those flowers around town. And that's my way to sort of spend time with her and to remember her.
Have you ever gone back to visit to see if those flowers grew?
Yeah, I've seen some sprouts come up. Unfortunately, I've had to discover new locations every time because they're really good at trimming the weeds in the park we used to always go to, and that's where I go. So I'm always trying to be tactical where I try to plant them. But this year I got a pretty good...
You got a good game plan this year?
I got a good game plan this year.
That's good.
So when we talk about grief, death is definitely the one that everyone can resonate with. They've heard, they've seen, and unfortunately grief is one of those things that we can experience the loss of people, but grief, depending on that connection, depending on the circumstance, can be just so devastating. And grief isn't just about death.
Right.
We grieve relationships. We grieve ourselves. We were talking before this episode, after everything I went through the last couple of years, it's like I'm still going through a grieving process of who I was while I'm discovering who I'm becoming.
Yeah. It's it's the soul's response to loss, and it
Yeah.
could be any loss. It could be death. Like you said, death is the one we all kind of talk about the most, or the one that maybe hits us the hardest. But if we're being honest, if you're with somebody for a number of years and the relationship breaks up, there's a tremendous amount of loss, a tremendous amount of grief there. It doesn't just have to be death, because really, in that case, it's the death of that relationship. Because you grow into each other, you become one, and then ripped away. Just like when somebody passes away, they're just ripped from us. So it's very important to remember that when we're dealing with people who are grieving, to be kind, because it's not up to us. Like I used to catch a lot of crap back in the day. One of my guys, and I tell the story all the time. Some people think it's funny, and some people go, "Oh man," but this guy, and I won't say his name in case this embarrasses him, but because we're still friends to this day. But his cat passed away, right? And this guy loved his cat. He loved his cat. It was his entire world. And I think he loved that cat more than he loved his wife. Maybe. Yeah. She knows him too. Maybe. Yeah. But man, he loved this cat, and you could just feel it. You could just feel how much he loved it. He talked about it all the time. It was, So anyway, so the cat was elderly and it passed away, and he calls me and he's bawling, and I'm like, hey, what's wrong? What happened? And he's like, she died. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it was his wife. Because he was really upset. And so I'm talking to him. I'm doing a lot of listening, but I really want him to know that I'm listening and paying attention, because we're on the phone. And he says, I just can't do it. I can't come into work for a while. I'd like to take some bereavement. I was like, dude, you take as much time as you want, and this and that. And we get into the conversation, and eventually he tells me that it's his cat that passed away. Well, human systems aren't really built to give a crap about our pets in that way. You don't get bereavement time for cats. But I gave him bereavement time for his cat because it was very important to him. But because, I don't have to understand why he's grieving so hard. I just know that he's grieving. And if time is what he needs, if that's the thing I can do for him, then I'm going to give it to him. I gave him a week of bereavement leave for his cat. So, sometimes people laugh at me for that. They're like, well, are you kidding me? Or whatever. But, I mean, who am I to judge his grief? Yeah. Who am I to judge why he's grieving? It's not important why someone's grieving. To me, that they're grieving is the important part. So
I get it, man. I tell you what, anything happens to this cat, I know it's going to be one of the hardest things I've ever gone through.
Yeah.
This cat's been with me through everything I've gone through the last 10 years, and
yeah.
No one ever gave me bereavement for my pets.
Well, you didn't work for me.
And I went right back to work.
You worked for the wrong people. I'd have given you bereavement leave. So, in our teachings and on this path, we believe and we know that grief is not a weakness or something to be fixed, right? I'm not going to fix someone's grief. But to understand that it's a very natural experience. I mean, as natural as dirt, as natural as air. It's a natural experience. We look at it as a process of transformation, though, that begins when something we held dear was taken from us, or changed, or lost, or broken apart. But it's also important to know we teach that grief isn't just sadness. No, it's not just being, like Eeyore, depressed and sad. It's complex. It's layer upon layer upon layer. Bless you. Upon layer. I think that was a sneeze. Upon layer of energy. And that contains sorrow or anger or longing or confusion, numbness. This thing isn't linear. It doesn't follow any rules either. And it doesn't time.
No, not at all.
Right.
But one of the big things out there, I mean, they have the model for grief, the Kubler-Ross model, and it's DABDA, which is denial, anger, bartering, depression, acceptance. And even though that seems like a linear path, it's not. These are just the emotions that are most prominent
Right.
throughout it, and you can bounce in between them.
Yeah,
One of the reasons
or
toxic
grab two or three at the same time, Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons toxic relationships are so hard to grieve is because you never get to that acceptance stage because of the confusion those type of dynamics create.
But from the spiritual side of things, I want people to understand that even in perfect faith, unbreakable faith, right? Sorrow still has a place in there. And grief is not our enemy. It can be a teacher, or it could be a
structure.
Yeah. And we teach that if we look at things as a teacher, and of course it's not like, okay, someone died, now this is a teacher. Take some time. Again, there's no time here. Grief doesn't honor timelines, and it's not linear. But eventually this becomes a teacher for us. It shows us where our heart was invested. It shows us what mattered most to us. And if you allow it, grief can become a guide, not to take you back to what was, but to lead you towards something deeper compassion, deeper wisdom, and strengthen that connection to the universe, or to your God, or to whatever.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we say on this podcast, I know I bring up a lot, is in life when we go through hard times, we either get bitter or we get better. And this is one of the most prominent areas that this path is woven for us, where we can either choose to let our grief consume us, often from us trying to avoid it. I've seen too many people go through horrendous things, and the grief of those situations they just suppress. And when you do that, you end up falling into addiction. You fall into self-destructive patterns because your soul is crying out to be heard, and you're avoiding it.
And look, I'll say this. I've told people this. I've counseled people on grief many, many, many times throughout my life. And I would tell them, and I've said this to her, because in my time with her, she's lost a foster mother, a foster father. We've lost people out of my family.
Yeah.
Lost my grandmother, who was one of the people that helped me start this path that I talked about in one of the first 2 episodes or so. But one thing I've always told them, I said, look, fall apart. It's okay to fall apart. It's okay to not know what to do right now. I will hold you. I will carry you. I won't tell you what to do. I won't tell you how to do it. But fall apart. But don't forget to allow yourself to be put back together too. So,
right.
It's okay to be just a complete cluster. You know what? It's okay. It's gonna be probably, and it never gets any easier. You get better at it, but it never gets easier.
No, but I like how you said that, how let yourself fall apart, because there's so much truth to that. I remember when my ex passed, I mean, it's like, man, I bawled nonstop for the first week. And then from there, it was a couple times a week, and it was a slow progression. I mean, luckily, grief is what destroyed her in the end. The grief of seeing her mother pass, which was right before we got together and started her cycles. And I knew once she passed, it's like, I can't do what she did. I can't drown myself in my sorrows. I gotta allow myself to cry, to feel the pain, the magnitude of it. And man, I had to fall apart. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. It's just a matter of if you go willingly or if
it can feel like getting shattered like glass. And a lot of that is really nothing you can control. When it hits. But just don't forget to get put back together again. Don't forget that you have the power to pull yourself back together with grace and with kindness and with compassion. But fall apart when you need to. And you know what? That goes for anything. You lose your job. Go in your room and cry and sob and do whatever. Fall apart. It's okay to fall apart at any time, just as long as you remember to also put yourself back together.
Which isn't an immediate thing.
No. It can be for some, but for others, like I said, there's no rules here. This isn't a linear thing. Although the model is good, and it really does help people in the healing industry, we'll say, help kind of people get put back together because of that model. It's good, but I mean, nothing follows anything.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all.
Yeah, grief doesn't follow any of that stuff. As good as it is, and it is good. But yeah.
Well, there's so many resources out there for grief. I mean, I know for me, it's like I dip my toes in grief groups, going to church. I explored anything I could to try to sort of get grounding in the storm. And really what stuck was when I started working with you, because like you said, grief can be powerful. The things it can help us do. And grief was the gateway for me to start my journey.
Mm.
It was when I truly saw myself for who I was.
Yeah, and that can be scary too.
Yeah.
It
It's like,
usually
what
is
were my
pretty scary.
values? What were my attachments? What does my
Right.
inner world look like? I mean, for me, that's when I realized I was playing the hero my whole life when it came to relationships.
Mm-hmm. And when it hits us, and it breaks those masks sometimes, and it breaks it breaks everything, which is why we say it's not necessarily a bad thing. In the first few moments, which could be 6 hours or 6 months, these things are going to be really hard to face because you're just stripped. You're stripped naked almost sometimes, and you have to face that on top of dealing with loss, and it's a really difficult time to learn about attachment when it's ripped away from you. It's not the best time to learn about unhealthy attachment, but that's when we learn. For most of us, that's how we learn that stuff. So,
Well, again, it goes back to that quote: the lotus only blooms in muddy water.
yeah, yeah,
One of the laws of the universe, though, the law of wisdom. If we're able to learn things without having to go through suffering, we will not have to suffer. But for most of us,
well, you can either have a what was it you said? You could either have a good life or a
a good life or a
an
strong
easy life.
character.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You
Yeah,
can
easy
either
life
have
for a
you
strong
can either
character.
have an easy life or a strong character. Usually can't have both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the price of one is the other.
that's right. That's right. It doesn't mean we like it. It doesn't mean we enjoy people going through this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean we enjoy people being abused and having traumas, but the best of us do.
Yeah, I mean, for so many of us, we wander on autopilot. It takes major upheavals of our life for us to really get a shift, and I think part of that is we go through that dark night of the soul, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And in those dark moments, it allows us to gain new perspective because it's through all of this work, all the things we teach, all the things we talk about. It's all about shifting our perspective, and that needs to happen on a deep level because
Mm-hmm.
only 5% of our thoughts are conscious thoughts. And when we
Right.
consciously know something, it does not mean we embody it.
Right.
And in those moments, can we truly reach our subconscious and lay new groundwork for
Right.
different understanding?
And eventually, if you practice enough, it becomes effortless action, the way of the master. Just do without doing.
Yeah. And with grief, it's allowing those emotions to come to you, to flow through you. It's one of the things I've really been focusing on a lot as I've been really going through the motions of my grief. And it's just like, I've really gotten so good at allowing those emotions to come up and not take me for a ride, but instead allow them to come through and pass through me instead of holding on to them.
Hug the cactus, man. That's what grief is.
Yeah.
It's hugging the cactus. And it sucks, but if you hug it long enough, you'll find a lot of powerful things will change, and that the grief carries a lot of power within it, right? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, so many people are so afraid of hard emotions, and so many of us, I know for years, I shoved down grief up until this journey, and it took something extreme to crack it open and for me to finally be like, all right, I need to deal with this. But, man, grief, when gone unaddressed, will create a storm inside your soul. But the power of harnessing that storm can give you power unlike anything you've ever known.
Yeah, like I said, it really feels like things are broken or shattered sometimes, but within that, there's also a becoming. There is this power with grief. It's quiet sometimes. It's really forceful at other times. And it doesn't generally show itself through strength of control. You can't really control grief. That's why we shouldn't control how other people grieve. And we shouldn't really try to control too much of the process because, as you said, our being is mostly autonomous. It does what it does without our permission, without our awareness. So it's important to let it do that through grief too. Don't try to squeeze it and try to hold on to it, but by surrendering.
Yeah.
When you surrender your control over it, you allow transformation to take place. You may be like a rebirth of meaning.
Yeah.
depending on what the loss was, right? Because it does. It kind of shatters you, strips you almost naked, and now you have a chance to be reborn almost, at least transformed. And, we teach that grief isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens within you. Nobody can grieve. I can't grief you. You're either grieving or you're not. And it's just not, and again, look, it's not just a reaction to loss for us. It's that kind of invitation to initiate a deeper awareness, a deeper presence, a deeper version of ourselves, that more authentic, true self.
Yeah. I think a big part of that is when you're going through grief too. I mean, you learn to feel these things in your body and not intellectualize them. Because that's where we get caught up in so much of working through our feelings and our emotions, especially stuff that's been stored.
Right.
We're so programmed to analyze everything, to look at things from all these different perspectives. And we get lost in that when it's as simple as allowing the sensations to arrive in our body, whether that's you need to cry, you need to go hit a pillow, you need to scream into the wind. Because again, it's okay to feel anger, but what you do with that anger is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to be angry.
Somatics are magical. Doing physical ways to release these tensions in our body, to express ourselves in ways that help us process these emotions that are, because grief is a lake, and you're used to a stream, and you can't just pour that lake down a stream. I remember asking my girl a long time ago, and it's like, why can't I just feel all this and be done with it? And she said it perfect. You're like a tap. You got to let the water drip out, because if you let it flow through like that, you're just going to destroy yourself.
She's right. Yeah, or flood the basement, right?
Yeah.
Now you got a whole nother problem to deal with.
Yeah, destruction that comes with that.
Not impossible, but makes it that much more difficult. It's already hard enough. She's right. But I want you to understand that grief is one of our most powerful medical processes.
Yes.
It forces change, like it or not. And if you're one that likes to hide from yourself and kind of suppress and all this stuff, you're going to flood your basement. That's what's going to happen. Your basement's going to get flooded, and now you got all kinds of different problems. Like I just said, we were talking about authenticity. It takes everything you thought you knew, and not just everything you thought you knew, but like we were talking about before the show, everything that you've built up to what you want people to know of you, and it burns it down. And it doesn't do it to destroy for the sake of destruction, but for the sake of being able to refine all those things.
Yeah.
Well,
this is where the lead turns to gold when it comes to emotional alchemy. This is the most powerful transmutable force you can deal with. But it is about dealing with it. Yeah. Otherwise, it does become something destructive.
And I know that someone is listening to this right now or watching it, and they're saying, man, these guys are really making light of grief. No, I want you to understand that, we can't possibly know what every individual is going through. I've been working with Michael for many years now, and I don't know to what depth he's hurting at times or whatever. So I'm not making it light. I'm not making light of any one situation. Your mileage may vary, so just kind of understand that we're talking about grief in a way that we can, because it's a really heavy, difficult thing to just tell somebody, and you really probably shouldn't anyway. So I just want to throw that out there, because there's people right now listening that are grieving, and they're grieving really hard. And we just hope you just open your mind and open your heart, and maybe something you hear today will resonate with you and maybe help you take a step or two forward.
Another important thing with grief too is to make sure you have a community you can talk to about it. Whether that's just one person who understands the connection you had or what you went through. Mm-hmm. But when we repress these things, we end up... It's easy to get lost in it. We need to be... It is so... It's not imperative, because some people like to keep things to themselves. Mm-hmm. But I do think for most people, we need to be witnessed. We need to be... have mirrors to express our pain,
right,
and for that pain to be acknowledged, justified, validated.
Yes.
Because as much as this journey is validating ourselves, connection is so important because we need mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
We need connection. And when we try to repress our problems, we try to be stoic and act like nothing's wrong.
Mm.
It creates so many issues. One of the reasons I had so many issues growing up, mental health wise, I've come to realize, was my grandfather died in front of me when I was 4. And that, my parents were very stoic through it. And I think it's because they didn't want me to be perturbed or pick up on their stuff. And I always felt wrong because I felt such sorrow as a kid.
Mm.
And I had depression for years. My best friend died when I was 6. And these little things just built up because at that point, at 6, I had already learned that most people don't feel a lot of emotion when someone dies. And I felt destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to shove it down, and depression reigned my life for most of my childhood.
And that's unfortunate. My kids lost several grandparents as they were growing up. I'm not the greatest example of visible grief because I don't see what I was talking about earlier with the axiom. I literally see death as that. It's hard for me to find a moment to be sad, but also, and what you're talking about is finding people that can grieve with you. And
or at least to let me know it's okay to feel the way I felt.
For me, and you and I have talked about this over, many times, and
right.
People who know me personally understand because they've seen me lose people, and I do cry a little bit, but that's not the release valve I need. I almost go right to, my God, they're free. I'm a little jealous. They're free. They're, you know what I mean? They're
right.
A moment to celebrate. This is a moment to, but so when I say that I grieve, it's kind of hard to see me grieve, the outer part of me, because I know there are people around me grieving differently, and they're counting on me to not make them feel bad for that. So, my kids, when they were growing up and they lost grandparents, it was, they never really questioned, why Dad didn't seem upset. But I was always constantly telling them, how are you feeling? It's okay to feel this way. This happens to people, and it's really hard to let them go. And and it depends on how old they are. You talk to them a little differently, but that was the one thing, her and I never did was tell them that any of their feelings were right or wrong.
Right.
Because, it's important for them to experience those, as hard as it is for a parent. Now, you know what? As a dad of 5 children, and when your kids are going through this, man, you don't really know what to do, but you want to protect them. And, it's unfortunate that it hurts you in such a way. I can kind of understand that they really wanted to protect you out of love.
Yeah.
But like we've said before in many different episodes, that even with the best intentions, we still hurt people by accident, and it can cause them long-term issues. And everybody says, oh, well, everybody's so weak these days. And it's not that everybody's weak these days. This is the human condition it's been like this for forever. It's just now there's more resources available, so people are taking advantage of all these different resources. So it's just, and it's less taboo now. It's starting to become less taboo, which is a really important thing. Because, look, health should always be a holistic thing. You should always try to heal your mind, spirit, body, and your emotions, and try to bring those all up to health, because then it's when you're truly healthy. If there's just more things available for people now, which is a good thing. So, when I hear people say they're weak, no, they're not. They're honest. They're not weak. They're being honest, and that's a good thing.
Damn straight.
That's a good thing.
So we were getting into transmuting grief. Grief is so powerful because if you take that energy, you decide that you want to learn from the experiences you had, to honor the experiences you had, the person, the dreams, all of it. You begin to grow. I know for me, it's, again, grieving is not a linear path. There's no, you start feeling better, and then you're over it. No, it is up and down. I mean, 3 years in, I'm still grieving, and that's very normal.
Yes.
There is no timeline on this, but the changes I've made in my life since dealing with the major griefs I have the last couple of years has been the most radical transformation I've ever had in my entire time living.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so thankful for that because it's truly started to teach me to be authentic, to have passion. I mean, the greatest gift we can give isn't to ourselves, but to others. And through my grief, it's what motivated me to get into this podcast and to get into life coaching, to help others who are in the darkness to find their way to their own authentic light.
Mm-hmm.
That is power right there. That is alchemy. That is taking suffering and turning it into fuel.
Yeah.
Grow and to flourish.
Yeah. It's sacred alchemy, man. It is transforming these super dense and heavy emotions into things like clarity and insight and strength. And as we said just a few minutes ago, it's one of the most powerful catalysts for transformation because it just forces us to face what's real and what's actually happening. And through this process, we start to discover things that truly matter. And we start to discover who we really are and where we've placed our meaning and where we can place our meaning in a better place and our purpose. Grief becomes growth. Loss can become legacy. Pain can become purpose. So it's...
Jesus, that was good.
It's true, though. It's really, really true. You know, and this transmutation will happen if you process, if you allow yourself to process. And it'll happen if you don't hold on tightly, but just surrender and control. Don't put yourself in a position where you can be hurt or anything like that. You can control that stuff, but let the process happen. And don't let anybody tell you the right way. Nothing I'm saying today is the right way. Only you know that, but you won't know that if you don't allow yourself to go through this process.
Well, again, it's that buffalo analogy. The buffalo, when a storm comes, the buffalo runs towards the storm, not because they're crazy or masochists,
Right.
because the fastest way for them to... The least wet they're going to be is moving towards the storm than running away from it with it chasing them on their heels.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or growing and turning into something worse, like a tornado or something.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, they're smart. Buffaloes are pretty cool. As a side note, you guys should look into buffaloes. They're pretty cool. If you ever have a chance to go up to Montana, just don't mess with them, man. Bad things happen to people.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so we're talking about how we can transmute it, but one thing I'm interested in, Michael, is for you to share maybe some ways that you started to kind of how the progression, how you processed your grief to get you to where transmutation was happening, this alchemy was happening kind of around you.
So it was a little bit of just going through it, but also some synchronicity. I went through a lot of my grieving. Again, the first couple weeks were just tons of sadness, crying,
Right.
feeling it. And as I started going to grief groups, as I started getting involved in different communities that were dealing with grief, that's when I stumbled upon the term shadow work.
Okay.
And I got this book on shadow work. I can't remember what it was called because it was
Well,
more
you
or
really,
less just...
really wanted to go through it, didn't you?
Oh, man. Well, I'll be honest. I didn't realize at the time that shadow work, as much as most of us do it when we're in hell,
Right.
it's best done not when you're in hell.
It's a little better, but yeah, most of us learn the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I had such a clear lens. I felt so brutally honest with myself. I was in such a dark place that I was willing to lay myself bare to myself.
Right. What else
because,
what's the worst that can happen to me now, right? Yeah.
And so, yeah, I started looking at, I knew it was a toxic relationship. 7 years of me helping someone with addiction, with anger issues, with all these things. There was a lot of love in that relationship. I loved her dearly, but it was also caustic for my well-being.
Yeah.
And it was just, why did I stay? Why did I not set firmer boundaries? Which, I'll be honest, boundaries wasn't even a word in my repertoire at the time.
Right.
But that's when I started learning about the hero, and it's why am I the hero? Why do I keep doing this? Because it's just and I realized that's how I gained love and validation. Because I never knew how to give it to myself. And it's just, the more I started opening these doors, the more I started seeing myself clearer and clearer in the steps, or better said, the changes I needed to make. And it did take me to a darker place, and that's when I reached out to you, because I knew we had talked a bunch, and I asked you, what do you know about shadow work? And you're like, oh, I got some information for you. Let's meet up. And Thank God that happened.
It's like,
Because you really helped me guide my way through that and understand what I was doing. Because, again, don't do shadow work without a guide.
Yeah. Yeah, or you might be doing it a couple times. Because really, it's like, this is going to sound dramatic, but it's like having somebody escort you through some of the layers of hell because they know the way. So you got to trust them. You got to let them take you through these really, really dark places.
Yeah. It's like I had a lot of anger, so I started kickboxing. I started going to different healing circles.
Is that the place where the lady was beating you up? Was that where we were
That's
talking
the
about?
place. I'll tell you what, I missed that place. Sucks there's only one in Colorado. Rockbox Fitness. Highly recommended for anyone.
Yeah.
Best shape of my life.
If you want to get beat up too, they'll do
so
it.
you really
Yeah, they will.
like torture, huh?
He does. He does. He's a glutton for punishment.
All the way around.
But we talk about processing grief. It's not something that you just get over. And
No.
you hear that, hey, just get over it, man. Or, yeah, but you know what? She wasn't great for you. Just get over it, man. You're better off. None of that is helpful at all. Don't ever do that. If you can't say anything without saying that stuff, just tell your friend you love them and just, F off in another direction because you're really going to cause some problems for them. But back to the buffalo, it's something that you walk through. You don't get over it, you walk through it. And the way you walk through it matters because there is a way for each of us to process some of this stuff. But there are some kind of guideposts along the way that, again, I said that we all grieve our own way, and that's true. But there are some things that help us process no matter who we are. But it's important that we allow it to move through us and for us to walk through it rather than trying to suppress it or rush it or control it or intellectualize it. That's a good idea. Let's get it stuck in our head. That's not a good idea. Try to let the whole of your being absorb this process holistically.
Yeah. Well, one important point that you brought up is, even processing it, working through it, getting to the other end of that storm, grief does not go away.
No.
I heard this beautiful analogy that was, imagine grief is like a ball inside of a jar. All right, the ball doesn't shrink.
Mm-hmm.
The jar must expand. You must grow around your grief.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you grow, the grief will become smaller.
Yeah.
That's why grief haunt people for decades.
Yeah.
You see people that do go down the path of bitterness or the path of pain. And a lot of that is avoiding their grief, but also not utilizing their grief. For your grief to become smaller, often you must become greater than your grief.
Right.
I know one of the issues I had and why my grief was so intense with my ex was I didn't have much of a social life outside of that relationship. I didn't have much of a sense of identity outside of that relationship. And when that vanished, I was aimless. And I had to expand myself. I had to grow, discover, become. And a lot of this path we do in general, the axioms, this is all ways to expand yourself, to gain that awareness and become more, to become, instead of someone who is a service to themselves, a service to the world.
Yes.
In a way that is self-fulfilling. To fill your cup and then let it overflow onto others.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the most important things to take away from this episode is that grief will follow you. And it's not that it's going to haunt you. It's going to be as bad as it is right now with you going through it. But use it to grow, to become more. Allow yourself to grow around your grief.
Yeah.
Allow it to become a badge of honor in your soul.
Yeah. And to draw your analogy, we have to do these things. We have to let it unfold. And we have to do this honestly and kind of sacredly sometimes. Because it's really kind of it's a us thing in this moment. We do have others that help us, but only we can grow. Only we can expand. Only we can really truly get as deep into our hearts than anyone else.
Yeah.
If you allow your grief to be felt, and if you face it, and you start to integrate it, the jar grows. But when you ignore it or suppress it or try to control it, the ball festers. It grows into the same size container.
Yeah.
And it can only grow so much before what happens to that jar.
Well, it also ties into that universal principle, as above, so below.
Yeah.
You know, it's like addiction. Oh my gosh, addiction. I think one of the number one culprits for the cause of addiction in this society is grief and the avoidance of it, the replacement of it, to try to numb it, to push it down. And then, I mean, you just create more of the same.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through a few things before we move on and, give me your feedback. Because I think these are some of these are like these anchor points I was talking about that we all are going to kind of go through. How we do it, how we get there, all that other stuff is up to each individual, but I think some of these are anchors. You have to try and feel without judgment. We say this a lot about lots of other things, all of our emotions. When we're meditating, when we're doing all these different things, we always try to do things without judgment. And again, there is no right way to grieve. You might cry, you might go silent, you might feel numb, you might do all of those things. Allow it. We are reminded that what is unacknowledged controls you. What is faced transforms you. That's truth. When you ignore it willfully, it controls you because you're constantly trying to hide from it. You're changing who you are and the mask you wear and all these things to try and deceive it and move away from it. When you face it, it transforms you. You need to let yourself feel without shame. There's something that I heard once, and I don't know who said it, and I'm paraphrasing, but tears are prayers that have not yet found words. It's what it kind of feels like.
I like that.
It's good. I don't remember what the actual quote was, but that was kind of a paraphrasing it. It's a beautiful sentiment, but it's true.
But I love that you brought that up, though, because I know we talk in every episode, don't judge yourself, don't go through it. There's times you're going to get in your head about yourself and you're grieving, and am I being too much on people? Or
Right.
maybe it's, am I on the right life path? Like man, those emotions get heavy, but
They
you
do.
got to catch yourself when you're feeling them. Because when we talk about this, it doesn't mean we don't get those feelings. It doesn't mean that judgment does not come online, but we are aware of it now.
Mm-hmm.
And when that judgment does come online, you don't have a place here. Like, I am okay with where I'm at. I'm okay.
Right.
And the more you practice that, the easier it gets. And that was one of my biggest hurdles I had when I started this journey, was self-judgment. I was always so hard on myself for being human because I thought that was exactly how I was not supposed to be.
So another thing is that we should be naming what was lost or naming what was taken from us. Doesn't matter if it's a person or a relationship, a dream, or a version that you built above yourself and you couldn't maintain and now it's gone. Naming whatever it is gives it a form, and form gives it clarity. You can say it out loud, write it down, honor it. This is not about reliving it's about respecting the reality and truth of it. Give yourself some sacred space. Create as many moments of stillness as you can. Step away from distractions as often as you can.
Yeah.
Let that silence hold you and embrace you. Grief doesn't speak in noise most often. It kind of whispers in the quiet, right?
Yeah.
Constantly. And we talk about on this path a lot about entering the chamber of our hearts, where that's where everything we hold dear to be, inside that sacred chamber. And this is where pain meets presence, and this is where healing begins. We always think that we're hurt here, but this is more about where our healing comes from and where it starts.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, when I was going through my grief, I found that it's like, especially in the heavy moments of crying, like one of the issues I had is I had too good of a community, so they'd be constantly checking on me if they heard me crying, like, hey, are you okay? Is everything going on all right? Do you need anything? And so I started hiking all the time. I'd find a place high up in the mountains, way off the beaten trail. I'd do a little trailblazing, and I'd just let it go. Like having those sacred places, the sacred spaces, and communicating with people if you want that space, because that also helped me with that. But it's
because we all want to help somebody through it, someone we love. Like I told you before the show, I wasn't overly fond of Penny because of things that happened, but my heart shattered for you in a billion pieces because I love you so much. And, it's important for you to tell me, when I'm being overbearing, when I'm trying to coddle you or give you what you think I need. And if you tell me, hey man, I love you, I just need some space, I'll call you next week or I'll whatever. And that's perfect because you're setting those boundaries and you're setting that space that we're talking about so you can grieve. Because some of this process is alone and some of it is in the embrace of people that you love. So
Yeah.
It's really important. And you just segued into my next one, which is perfect. Bring the body into the process. You know,
Yes.
it's not just emotional, it's physical too. It's a lot of physical. It lives in your chest and on your shoulders and in your stomach and in your neck, and it just starts to hurt and you feel like you're being crushed. And things like breath work and gentle movement, meditation, hiking, punching and kicking the bag. Please don't kick people. Use the bag. Go to the place that Michael was saying and go get that out of you. There's something powerful about withdrawing from the mental anguish of it and the emotional anguish of it, and just doing something physical, something that gets your body moving, stretches you out, you sweat, you start to go through this cleansing process. Your body needs it too.
Yeah.
So, and there's one more. And I know we've been harping on this, but I do because it's important. Let the grief change you. It will not leave you the same. And it's not meant to. But the change can be, I don't have the word for it, amazing, fantastic. It could be
Astronomical.
It can and probably will deepen your empathy. It definitely will strengthen your soul. It'll sharpen your sense of what truly matters to you and bring out your authenticity. The goal is not to return to some normal. I don't even know what that is. No normal. The goal is to become someone better than you were yesterday. And so this processing is a journey inward, and you can't escape it if you want to. You just prolonging the suffering. So that I just wanted to kind of talk about that before we moved on.
I think those are some important tips too. Another great practice that I'm amazed you didn't bring up was journaling.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes when our mind is going a million miles per hour, which it does in grief, writing it on paper, it can be so powerful and help us slow our minds down because we can't think faster than we can write.
Right. I did have that, but I had it much later. So.
Okay, makes sense.
It's okay though. Journaling, writing, tapping, whatever, man. Whatever helps you get that, start to bridge those parts of yourself that really, when you get hit right in the chest, when you're lost, when there's a loss, a really big one, and you got to kind of pull those back together.
Yeah. Another nice thing you can do for yourself is I had an area that was almost like an altar. I had her picture up, her ashes, little keepsakes I had from the time we had together. And when I knew I was getting in that place, I'd put on her playlist, and I would just use that to let those emotions come up that I could feel starting to boil up again. Because that's sort of how the grief was. After the first month or two, it became sort of just this pot that would start boiling to the top. I'd have that release. I'd go back to a baseline.
Right.
And just allowing myself to lean into my body and feel where I was at and know, like, hey, I'm going to need to grieve a little bit tonight.
Yeah. Of course, breath and stillness. Those are always good, powerful tools. And they don't have to be, they can be whatever meditation you want or whatever breathing practice you want. I know sometimes we'll give you one. The one I usually say is forgot what I call it, calming breath. Do the calming breath. You called it something else the other day, but it's the same thing,
Yeah, box breathing.
Something simple is just hold your hands over your heart and breathe slowly and deeply and hold it on counts of 4 and and do that as many times as you need to. But be present. Allow yourself to feel the stomach, feel the chest, feel the breath coming in and out. Don't rush it. That's why we have counts, right?
Yep.
Really don't rush it, but don't judge it either. Don't analyze it. Just be with it. And once you're kind of in a place where you're calm and you're kind of level, just say something like, I am here, I am present, and I never carry this alone. Something like that. The breath is what anchors you to the waves, and you're able to give yourself a voice through this. Journaling, like you were saying, write freely, write honestly. I mean, just let it have it. Just let it out. You could say things like, what have I lost and what did it mean to me? And then write about that. Or what would I say to what I've lost or to who I've lost if I could speak freely and let it go? Just let it have it.
Yeah.
What is grief trying to teach me about love, about life, about myself? And then let yourself have it. Throw it down there.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need to make sense. Just do. And then
Release.
And don't you dare try to analyze what you were saying.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just write it down. Don't worry about it. The exercise Michael's going to share with us later will it'll be a much better kind of focused practice that I'm talking about here, so I won't go any further on that. Visualization. You could visualize yourself entering one of those quiet, sacred places that you have for yourself and give grief a form. Doesn't matter what form it is. Could be a puppy. I don't care. Could be whatever you want it to be. Could be a stick figure, a paper airplane. Go nuts, man. Do whatever. And then you talk to it. Why are you here? What do you need from me? What are you trying to teach me? And then just be quiet and listen. Listen without judging. There's a lot of non-judgment here, but it's really important because all of this work you're doing, it's you. You're talking to yourself. So be kind, be compassionate, at least be respectful, right?
Yeah.
Do this thing. Something that you said that was something I was going to bring up too, and it's important for a lot of people. Some kind of simple ritual of remembrance. One that honors and not avoids. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So, light a candle, talk to a picture, offer a prayer, a memory, or a blessing, whatever your thing is. But, it can be very powerful. And, visit it every once in a while. Like you said, your example was perfect. Well, I ask you because you're someone who has spent a lot of time grieving this family. We've grieved so much. We've had so much loss.
It's hard.
I'm not a fair representation of the gauge of how we're doing for our family with grief because I just,
Well, yeah, you're the solid, and I'm usually one that's there for them to be the shoulder. Sit there and feel very vulnerable and just go.
My role.
I mean, they do that with you. I'm not saying they don't. What I'm saying is
no, but no, you're right. You're right. My role is more of becoming that temple guardian that allows them to safely do it without interference. Mm-hmm. You were more like the priest that talked them through it. You know what I mean? Like as an analogy.
Yeah.
I was like the gargoyle that stood guard over the space until I didn't need to be there anymore. I was one protecting him, especially when we had to travel. I had to protect him from people. I had to protect him from bad information, bad advice, people telling him how to do things and not. You were the one that they opened up to and poured themselves into, which was, So basically, I was the temple and you were the vessel. You were the vessel that they poured their water into. So, and I think it worked out well.
It still does.
But for someone who's gone through a lot of grief, do you think that what we're talking about today is helpful?
Yes. And I think you're...
Hopefully non-judgy.
No, not non-judgy. For me, the journaling actually helped me a lot more.
Yeah.
With that aspect. I mean, with all of my...
I'm just checking the temperature of the show with our resident griever here. She's giving me the business, man.
That's what you want, though, right there.
I did a lot of journaling even before really getting involved with your...
I will die on that fucking hill. I will die on that fucking hill. Journaling heals everything. I will fucking die on that hill. That's why I always, every time, encourage people, journal.
Well, that's because, see...
You don't have to have a little fairy princess fucking diary. Well, just write it down, man. Write it down and fucking burn it if you need to.
Here's the thing. You can have someone sitting in front of you, and you're going to hold stuff back.
Yes.
Because you don't want to make that person emotional or put that much extra burden on that person because they're already sitting there listening to you vent.
Well, think about this.
But you can vent as much as you want and lay it down as hard as you want in that piece of paper.
Yep.
And no one's going to give a shit.
Well, because
no one's going to respond to you in a negative way, which you think you're going to get. Some people think,
well, sure,
I'm being a burden. I'm fucking taking up their time.
Yes.
But
you'll notice that when I allow when I have my brief moments of sorrow and sadness, I wait until I come to a safe place. Mm-hmm. Even I do that, and it's usually you.
Yeah.
When Nana passed away, I didn't shed one fucking tear until I came home and told you.
Yeah.
No,
Reverend, you can wait.
No, we're not doing that right now. So another one that I think is really important is having these safe conversations. Find someone you trust, someone who can listen without trying to rescue you or trying to tell you how to fix everything, and hold that space without pushing you along. Hurry up. Right. And it's important to be that space for someone else. Grief softens. It starts to get a little easier sometimes in those moments when it's time to have it witnessed and for others to grieve for you while you're grieving. Because, if you lost your grandfather recently, I don't know what that feels like for you, but I can grieve for you while you are going through this process and give you space and not hurry you along. And when you're done, you're done. And as you said, and when you said you're not ever really done, it's like with addiction, you're always recovering. You're always in the recovering stage. It never goes away, but you can grow your vessel much larger so that grief becomes a smaller thing in your life.
Right. No, and I like that a lot. I mean, to grieve for the person who is grieving is an effective way to give that empathy, to hold that space.
Yeah.
Even if you might not fully understand.
You don't have to understand. Just love them. Just fucking love them. Just love them as you did the day before this happened. That's all you got to do. There's a lot of grief counselors and a lot of people that know a lot of things and went to lots of schools. And, I'm not interested in learning or facilitating all these things that I learned in these big giant books. All I got to do is love you. That's all I got to do. And love you authentically and love you unconditionally and love you without expectation. You'll get through it when you get through it. I'm here for you. And sometimes when I want to be there for you, but you don't want to have anybody with you, and it's time for you to do some of this grieving on your own, these moments of solitude, then I love you enough to let you do that. I trust you. So, yeah, it's a passage. This is not a prison. It can be. It does become that, but it doesn't have to be. Think of it use it as a passageway, not a prison. And these tools and the exercise that Michael's going to share with us here soon, they're not here to rush you. You'll get to them when you get to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll tell you what, the more you try to push it, to try to rush this process, the more you're going to be drowned in it.
Yeah.
That was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, grieving what I had to grieve these last couple of years. Is it's one of those things where there's no fast forward button. There's no fix it quick scheme that works.
Yeah.
It all has to take the time it needs to take.
Yeah, and that's different for each of us. But, these aren't to rush you. It's to support you or to offer you some kind of support as you walk through this fire of transformation. Use what calls to you. Use it in your own time. Trust what resonates. Leave what doesn't. If I offered nothing today, my feelings aren't hurt. I trust you to do what's best for you. Just at least go through some process. That's all I'm asking you. Just go through a process. Try to understand it and try to come out of it better. Again, there's no right way to do this. Only an honest way. Just if you're honest, that's what's most important. And look, we teach that you're not here in this life to escape your pain. You're here to walk through it, transmute it, become more whole than you could have ever imagined. I have a few affirmations if you want me to share those before you take us through.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. These are some affirmations for some gentle strength. We'll just call it that. I allow myself to grieve without shame. This pain is proof of deep love, and it will shape me with grace. I am not broken. I am becoming. I honor my grief, and I honor the light within me that endures.
Were those from the book? Man, you're just like an affirmation fiend.
I love that. I love affirmations as much as I love seeing people journal.
Oh, that's a tough one right there.
It is a tough one. They're really good. They're both powerful.
Yes, but you can even write those affirmations in your journal.
True that.
Yes, you can write it in your journal. You don't have to say it out loud.
Right.
You're still saying it out loud, but to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the most powerful ways I've found to handle affirmations, especially if it's an affirmation you struggle with internalizing, is write it out over and over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah, if that's the way.
And you know what? And each time you write it, make it bigger. Each and every time. And the very last time, make it in full-blown caps black, like text.
Mm-hmm.
Like bold letters. I do that a lot.
Look, write them down, speak them out loud, shout them from the rooftops, whisper them in stillness. Just make sure that they're replacing all that self-judgment stuff with self-compassion, and you'll be fine. It doesn't matter how you do it. You're the boss. You figure out how to do it. What's best. It's like with meditation. You're the boss. You figure out what meditation works best for you. And how do you know? How do I know? Because when you've tried enough of them, you'll know.
Yep, you'll find what works for you. All these different practices, all these different teachings, whether us or someone else, it's all about finding what resonates with you and what allows you to handle these things and process these things.
Every single student, including Michael, has asked me, which one of these meditations are best? You'll know when you try them all.
And you made me try them all.
Yes, I did.
Every day.
Well, I encourage you to try them all. I couldn't make you do it, but yeah. Did you find the ones that work best?
Yep.
Yep. Because there's no way for me to know
they
that.
have different ones for different applications.
There you go. That's one thing that we all must understand. We are not. We have more meditations than we know what to do with. So there's plenty for you to try, and find the one that works best.
So for our exercise today, sit comfortably with a journal. Get into your
My
body.
man.
Yeah, I was ready for you. Breathe deeply and feel your body. Notice any areas you're holding tension. Choose someone or something you have lost. A person, a relationship, a version of yourself, even a dream. Write a letter to that loss. Let it all out. Say what was left unsaid. Express the love, the anger, the gratitude, and the grief. You can use prompts like, what I never got to say is, what I missed the most is, what I've learned from this loss is. Go deep into this. Fill it out. Let those emotions come up and allow them to pour onto the pages. And then read it out loud. This isn't mandatory, but give these words voice. Hearing your own words can move energy. Then you can choose what you want to do next, but you can take this letter, you can burn it, bury it, tear it up, or simply fold it and keep it in a sacred place. Give these things expression and then release them, which is the point of this exercise. And the more you do this, the more you allow yourself to get these emotions out and into the world, the more you can discharge these losses you have and transmute it into something greater. For our journalers, ask yourself, what has this grief come to teach me? What parts of me have been broken open, and what is trying to be born in their place? If I stopped resisting the pain, what would it want me to feel, to see, to release? Did you come with anything today, Justin?
Nope. I read what you had, and I was like, that's on point.
It's what's worked for me.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Before we go, I'll just leave you guys with this. Just remember, everything hard in life, it could either be there to destroy you or to teach you. That part's up to you. You decide what it does. And, remember, the path of Ashla teaches us that every ending that comes across our path is just scratch that. Just remember that on the path of Ashla, we recognize and we believe that every ending that comes before us is just a potential for a new beginning if we allow it to be. So, the choice is up to you, and it always has been. So, you can let it teach you or you can let it destroy you. I hope that you let it teach you. That's my hope for you.
It's one of the greatest gifts you can be given, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It all works out in the end if we let it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of this family. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.